Welcome, everybody. My name is John Giarmello, and I'm a member of the board of the Connecticut chapter of the American Marketing Association. With our panel event tonight, Marketing in a Pandemic, the purpose of this event is to share some lessons learned, tools, resources for marketing professionals on how to be agile and flexible during shifting marketing dynamics, changing customer demands, and competitive threats, specifically in this time of COVID-19. During this panel, we want to draw upon the expertise of our local specialists in our own Connecticut community regarding how they see the marketing industry shifting during the global pandemic. We find this especially important because the conversation on the pandemic keeps shifting, taking different turns in different parts of the globe, and we want to go through understanding the different effects of the pandemic. We know that markets are impacted, economies are tested, so on and so forth. So the way that we need to do business pivots. We'll also draw some quick comparisons between what marketing used to be and what it has evolved into based on some practical lessons that we'll go through. And we'll gain insight into what our panelists see happening now and where they see their industry shifting to in the future based on their work, their insight, and their experience. From our panel tonight, we hope you'll walk away with some useful do's and don'ts that will help you revise your marketing plans and strategies and business approaches. To that end, we've invited Randy S. Spina, Marketing and Operations Consultant, Carrie Ann Polo, CEO of New Park Creative, and Jeff Larson, President of Media Associates, to sit with us and tackle those very questions and concerns and insights. Before we get to the panel, though, a few housekeeping items. First, I want to introduce you to the newest president of Connecticut AMA, to provide an overview of our chapter, what we stand for, and what you can expect in the future.
Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday night. I'm Christine Fitzgerald. I'm the new president of the American Marketing Association in Connecticut, and I'm so excited everybody's here tonight. We had over 100 people register for the session, and it's our first virtual one of the season and many more to come. Thank you, John, for hosting and being the new voice of AMA. And I'm really excited about our panelists tonight, Carrie and Randy and Jeff. I know are going to do a fantastic job. We have a new board of directors that many of you may be aware of, and some new committee members. We decided that we weren't going to bore you with a bunch of bios of all these new people, but it is a very exciting group and lots of new content coming to you for marketing gurus very, very soon. If you want to learn more about the new board members and committee members, our new mentoring program, and the new benefits that are coming your way, please go to amact.org. You can see all our bios, our LinkedIn profiles, all of that good stuff. And we thought it would just be best to use the time tonight to really dig into how are we all pivoting to the new world that we're living in. And I'm really excited to turn it back over to John and talk with our panels. Just keep in mind too, I know that there's a lot of really good talent on this call, and we are in the process of retooling our communications team for AMACT. And if anybody has an interest in that, drop me a note in the chat box or reach out to me via email and we can have that conversation. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night and enjoy the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. The next quick point I want to make is just some benefits that people can get becoming members of AMA, obviously through AMACT, but they're national as well as local benefits that one can get by becoming a member. So I'm just going to share my screen and give a quick walkthrough of what you can expect as a member. So first of all, you can, at the national level, there's a lot of information, a lot of background that you can get on marketing, help you can get in marketing, journals, case studies, best practices, white papers, virtual events, podcasts. So that's all available at the national level. Also at the national level is the micro internship program. Essentially, it is kind of short bursts of internships where it's not somebody staying on for a semester or a year, but where you may need an intern, you can network to get that intern to help you with projects. Obviously, that helps cross collaboration, understanding who's out there in terms of talent and obviously the community can help each other. When it comes down to the local level in Connecticut, there's the mentoring program, as Christine had mentioned. So you can either be a mentee or a mentor based on the network that the chapter has. And also, because it is AMACT and it's a professional association, there obviously is the networking aspect for professionals in Connecticut and in Western Massachusetts. So these are just a few of the benefits for AMA at the national and local level. As Christine had said, please visit the website to get a little more understanding about us. 3 more things, just if you want to submit questions, please do so in the Q&A module that you'll have access to. You can drop questions in throughout the evening, or not the evening, we're not going to be here all night, but throughout the hour, I'm going to have my own questions, but I want to see what people may have out there that they want to get answered. The chat is also open for your networking purposes. If you want to drop your name, your company name, your title, your industry, any of that information, it's your choice. Please take advantage of the community that we brought together tonight. And then finally, after the session is over, as soon as we've closed out, a survey will pop up to get your perspective, your ideas on what you saw tonight, what you liked, what you didn't, including me. So you'll see that either as a pop-up, you will see it as a pop-up. You'll also get an email, but if you could do it as the pop-up right after the session so it's fresh in your mind, we would greatly appreciate it. That's it from me. Now I'm just going to introduce the panel. I had given just the names and the titles a couple minutes ago, but now I just want to go through the panel and have you each introduce yourselves, your background, your current work. And if we could start with Randy, jump to Carrie Ann, and then get to Jeff. Randy, please, if you could just give us a quick introduction of who you are, your background, so on and so forth, that'd be great just to get that conversation going.
Awesome.
Hey, John,
Thank you.
John, can you stop sharing your screen, please, John?
Oh, sorry. All right, there we go.
Okay, so first, a very big thank you to the AMA Connecticut Board for inviting me. This is wonderful. So my name is Randy Spina. I am a marketing consultant. I spent most of my career in financial services. My last corporate title was Vice President Marketing and New Product Development. And I have created, built, and scaled multi-million-dollar continuity and membership programs. Then I moved over to the travel industry, where I was the first general manager of a credit card startup division of a global travel company. Then up until June of this year, I was the founder of a small business marketing agency that I ran for 13 years. And then I just decided to pivot a little bit. Didn't want to run an agency anymore. It was a great 13-year run, but I wanted to move on to the next thing. And for me, that was pivoting over to marketing operations, because what I learned working with hundreds of small businesses across the nation was that the biggest reason marketing fails is not for lack of ideas, but for lack of internal support, procedures, processes, and all of that. So I always say that I'm great at processes, super organized, and so I feel like marketing operations is the next step for me. And when I'm not with clients, you can find me in the classroom, the virtual classroom now, teaching marketing and communications.
Thank you, Randy. Carrie Ann?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Ann Polo. I'm the founder and CEO of New Park Creative. New Park is a branded content and inbound marketing agency. We serve primarily service B2Bs, lots of healthcare, aerospace, manufacturing, all of the kind of Connecticut basics, if you will. I'm a marketer, but I'm really a creative and an artist at heart. I got my start in broadcast journalism, doing production design. Then I moved on to freelance for many agencies and production companies before founding my own agency. And that was about 10 years ago, and the rest is sort of history. I live in Tolland with my husband and my 2 kids. And aside from marketing, art, design, family, a huge passion of mine is mentorship. So I really like that slide that you had, John, with the mentorship program for AMA. And I'm super thankful to be here, and I'm really excited. So thank you to everybody who joined us tonight.
Thank you, Carrie Ann, for being here. Jeff?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Just echo the comments of Randy and Carrie Ann. Really excited to be here with you guys tonight. Thanks for taking a few minutes with us. My name is Jeff Larson. I'm president of Media Associates, which is a media planning, buying, and analytics agency based here in Connecticut. We do work nationally and globally with many names you know. A lot of work in higher education, a lot of work in financial services and healthcare. Some of our bigger clients are the University of Phoenix, Yale New Haven Health right here in Connecticut, a number of retail brands. So really kind of cover a pretty broad swath of types of clients. For me, in my career, I've been a brand side marketer for most of my career. So hopefully as now sitting as here as an agency president makes me empathetic to the needs of our clients, because I've certainly been on that side of the table. Was a CMO prior to joining Media Associates. So really excited to be here tonight. We're certainly seeing are on the front lines of brands and consumers and what they're doing in the marketplace right now as a result of COVID, and not just COVID, all the social unrest and other things happening in our country, kind of all creating this very unique and strange environment for all of us to try to navigate. So look forward to sharing some thoughts on what we've experienced and hearing from the other panelists. Thanks for having us.
Jeff, thank you for mentioning the unique experience and the societal changes that are going on. Obviously, everything is shifting and changing so much. So for that first question, I'm going to go to Randy. Randy, combining your two worlds of professional and academic experience, what are your general thoughts on where we stand today versus the past? What general changes have you seen in the marketing industry and or your business as a result of the pandemic?
So I've identified three overarching trends based on the current pandemic market. So the first one is, I think we have to talk about retail. With the closing of 9,500 bankruptcy stores last year and another 25,000 to come by the end of 2020, brands are losing their ability to connect directly with their end consumer. So, you've had Lord & Taylor that is closed, and Pier 1 and Men's Warehouse, and, Century 21. So I think that brands are going to have to understand the direct-to-consumer or DTC market. They're just going to have to adopt that, and that's probably going to be a new skill set for a lot of in-house brands because they never had to go direct before. So, to forge those relationships with their end consumers, I think is actually a lesson worth learning. Because this is what I've been telling my own clients for so many years. It is the very best way to tether your clients and prospects to you is to have a direct relationship with them. It also makes them a lot less likely to jump to your competitor, right? Because everybody's so price sensitive now, and I don't know about you, but my inbox is filled with discount coupons and all of that. For products and for services. So I think it just makes a lot of sense to learn how to go direct. And so depending upon what your business model is and what industry you're in. So I've just identified several possible ways that brands can do this. One is obviously building the most robust e-commerce website possible so that people can, when they find you, they can just buy from you. That's number one. Number two is creating membership models. There have been so many successful ones, starting with Birchbox way back when, and now every single industry has like a monthly subscription model, and that's also a great way to stay direct to your consumers. Social shopping ads for fashion and home goods, Instagram has been so successful for so many brands where you can just, buy right directly from their post. And if possible for fashion or home goods or even food, open your own retail, a small boutique. There's certainly not a lack of retail space available these days, unfortunately. But I think the last one everybody should be doing, which is email marketing. I am a huge fan of email marketing. It is the best return on investment. You are having a direct connection to your customers and prospects, depending upon what your industry is. For the 13 years I had my agency, I had about 500 people on my, 500 companies on my email list. And once a month I was in their inbox, and it works like a charm. it's wonderful to be able to tether. You're always top of mind, you know, and it's so inexpensive. It's pretty easy to do. And so I would highly recommend that everybody look at, you know, email marketing as a way to stay in front of their end user. And then the second trend that I've identified is actually comes from a survey that I read by McKinsey & Company that identified purpose and mission. End users are more and more making buying decisions based on the positioning of the company and how good they are for society and what they're doing. So a couple of examples that I have, just the other night actually, I saw a TV spot for Valero Oil. Or Valero Fuel, I believe they're called, and they have started a campaign where they will gas up cars and vans for free for people who work with animal rescue organizations, which is a cause that is near and dear to my heart for sure. And another example is King Arthur Flour Company. For 230 years, that was their name, and they just recently rebranded to King Arthur Baking Company. And so I was one of those that jumped on the pandemic baking craze. I never made bread in my whole life until March. Let me tell you, there is nothing as comforting as the smell of bread baking in your home. I will say that. So,
Pandemic or not.
yeah, exactly. You know, and they have backed it with a campaign that they're calling Bake With Us. And the tagline is, we believe in inclusion, diversity, and equity. And the way that they are putting, you know, putting their diversity out there is by having their employees bake in their own home and doing sort of like little Food Network kind of segments, you know, cookies, cakes, bake, you know, whatever. Yeah. And they're proving their point, you know, by the diversity of their employees, of you know, where they live, what, you know, what ethnicity they are, what they're baking to celebrate their ethnicity. And I think it was a beautiful way to sort of make that jump from what was so popular for such a long time, experiential marketing, which nobody can do anymore, right? Because of what's going on. And this is, you know, sort of a digital experiential marketing. And it's very, very successful. And then the third trend that I've identified is what I call, you know, nirvana. Anything that any company can do to pivot and making work from home or schooling from home, you know, a little easier for the end user is absolutely, you know, it's like, oh, you know, yeah. And so two examples of that is how here in Connecticut, how so many distilleries, you know, made the jump from, you know, making alcohol to making alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Yeah. You know, that was a really great pivot. You know, that was genius, actually. And then the other one is what was being called granny pods. You know, for as little as $1,500, if you have a small backyard, you can effectively add a room onto your home. And those things have been selling like crazy. They're advertised everywhere. And they've been used as, you know, home offices, classrooms, you know, she sheds. Yeah. You know? It's like, everybody's home and now you can escape, you know, you have this like pod, you know, in your backyard.
Yeah, it's amazing how many companies, I've seen it both ways, and we'll get to this in a minute, but I've seen it both ways where some companies are very good at pivoting and the other companies, they're just paralyzed. They're not really moving. They're not shifting in any kind of direction. Carrie Ann, if I could jump to you, from your point of view with more of a focus on brands and messaging, what have you seen brands doing to adapt to the changes brought on by the pandemic?
Big question. You know, it's interesting, just to comment on what Randy was talking about, email marketing. It sounds so simple. If you think about how quickly like social platforms come and go, rise and fall, email has been there. Like nothing has knocked email off its off the ledge. If you think about the most intimate way to reach someone, the first thing that you check first thing in the morning is your email. I digress. So in thinking about this question, a few things came to mind. A big one was more in the moment marketing. So we don't really have the luxury of planning our content calendars too far in advance because the world is changing every day. So whereas in the past we would have done a lot more planning around content, we just, like I said, don't have the luxury. So you have to be able to pivot and kind of work in the moment. Otherwise you're either outdated or you're stale or your message is going to be off. And I think we're also, you know, it's funny, again, what Randy brought up, the King Arthur flower doing the little snippets on Instagram. They may not have ever done that type of content before. On the other side of the coin, we're in some ways extremely limited to how we can get our messages out there, right? I'll just speak to my experience at New Park. We produce heaps of content, and we've had to get super creative because, you know, we haven't been able to shoot video, right? Teams aren't even teams who were remote before, who would travel to, you know, a big event, they're not doing that. So we've lost a lot of that. And so we have to be, you know, pretty creative to kind of supplement. And I would also say brands are doing a better job at social listening than they've ever done before.
Yeah.
I feel like never have brands been more desperate to understand their audience in the context of their emotional response to the pandemic, because it's not anything we've ever experienced before. So it's truly new for everyone. And there's also more noise on the internet than there's ever been before. And I think, at least for the first few months of the pandemic, listening was the best way to understand, you know, early on when ads and promotions and everything just kind of came to a grinding halt, and it was like, well, all we can do is really listen, so that we can gauge where we are and where we could possibly go with what we've got.
Because I mean, in any kind of platform of business or any area of business, it's like people were afraid to make the first move because it was uncharted territory. So it's almost like they had an excuse to just, you know, settle down, listen to your audience, listen to your customers. So there was a lot of that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and just the difficulty of obviously your own experience of not being able to create as much content, but kind of pivoting around that to reach your market.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Carrie Ann, were you going to say something else?
I did. I just had a couple more points. I'll make it super quick.
Sure. No rush.
Point, yeah, on the point of timeliness, I think some, you know, in some cases there's opportunities, and some, you know, brands and companies have blossomed out of the pandemic, right? You know, with what they have to offer. Others are kind of scrambling to pivot, if you will. But again, just talking about how do we pivot the experiential marketing. 4 months ago, Airbnb launched a new product, online experiences. Now there's over, you know, 700 experiences that connect hundreds and thousands of guests with people all over the world, hosts offering, you know, their own unique experience, so that those hosts are able to continue to make money even though they can't actually physically host guests. So I feel like striking while the iron is hot, looking for the opportunities, and timeliness, like that's not something that they could have waited on. They had to do it in the moment. It wasn't a 6-month planning phase. It was a task force. Let's get this thing to market quick, so we can in some cases keep our business afloat. And then I think, just a final note, communicating at a higher level, using language around working together, addressing the needs of the customer, helping, building, moving forward. It's like we've got a bit of a surge of humanity back into our marketing and back into our message, which, though through unfortunate circumstances, is actually quite refreshing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's almost like we're all in this together falls into that category, but then that would kind of set people off, like, because not everybody's experience was different. So even the choice of wording is just so key. And again, like you said, that sensitivity to what people are going through. Jeff, when it comes to your work in media, what have you seen in terms of changing media consumption by consumers, and what have brands been doing in response to new behaviors?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really comes right out of, I think, what you started to hear from Randy and Carrie Ann too.
Yeah.
As you know, they use the word pivot multiple times, and that's a really important word here. You had, you know, every brand on the planet had to suddenly figure out what their path forward was going to be. Messaging was obviously the first piece of that, but from a media perspective, it meant they were either pausing their work, doubling down on their work, maybe having to retool their creative message. So it meant a lot of changes in the media landscape too. If I were to give you one positive headline in all of this craziness, media consumption is up. You know, we're turning to our screens through the pandemic, but we've seen media consumption up sharply since the start of the pandemic. There's obviously winners and losers in that process. digital media, streaming services are absolutely at the top of the list in terms of some of the through the pandemic, and really been driving a lot of the growth, as you would expect. I think that, that one of the main drivers is we've been trapped at home and looking for ways to escape or keep ourselves entertained or connected. We're turning to our digital platforms, our mobile devices, our desktops. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly signed up for a few new streaming subscriptions during the pandemic. But OTT and CTV-based streaming services are up about 55%, which is just off the charts. And that was a category that was already growing quickly. You see the entrants like Disney Plus, Hulu's been up sharply, and new entrants like Peacock. So a lot of activity in streaming services, audio and podcasts as well. The other thing that we're seeing with consumers from a media perspective is just an insatiable need for news and connection, right? We all want to know what's going on, and we all want to talk to others about it. So social media has really been at the forefront of that and a primary tool for communication. And it's true for every age group. Social media is no longer something for our kids. It's, Facebook has penetration levels off the charts. Instagram, Randy mentioned before. But the next generation, if anybody has a teenager in the house, you've heard a lot about TikTok, and it's grown by multiples this year, over 2 billion app downloads globally, I think.
Wow.
TikTok. So really drawing the attention of a lot of people, including regulators at this point.
Yeah.
Some other areas we're seeing. Oh, go ahead. You have a question?
No. Go ahead, Jeff. I'll ask afterwards.
Yeah, no. So gaming and esports is another area. Back to the entertainment piece, we're seeing a lot of growth in gaming and in esports. Obviously, just the growth of online shopping has been a huge factor affecting the media landscape. A lot of last click, last mile conversions that we're looking to drive. Amazon pretty much rules the world at this point. But obviously, if you haven't been in the DTC game, you are now. You've had to figure out a way to connect with your consumers more directly.
Yeah.
The other thing that's been interesting more recently too is just the return of live sports. And obviously there's been some success stories there and some challenges as well. But that's been, I think, something eagerly awaited by consumers, longing for content, longing for return to some of the sporting activities. I think the way to think about the impact of COVID broadly is it's really been an accelerant for trends that were already in play, right? So we were already seeing growth in a lot of these channels, but it's just kind of been on steroids and seen growth accelerated. So if you look at the eMarketer charts and curves of where we thought we'd be by 2023, we're probably there now. And I think that's been probably the biggest driver.
That's an amazing point you make, was just kind of the pandemic. It's either you fell away because you weren't moving fast enough, or I've seen so many examples of the plans that you already had in the pipeline. Now you had no choice. You had to get that new technology. You had to move forward. Jeff, if I could jump back, I think you said that in the media game, in the platforms game, there were winners and losers. You went through, if you did say that, you went through the winners. What were some of the ones that didn't hold up to par or actually lost footing? What are some examples of the ones that didn't do as well as they should have or could have?
Well, the most obvious one that everybody wouldn't be surprised by is out of home, right? We just stopped driving down the highway as much. Out of home took a big hit, especially early on. A lot of our clients are returning to some out of home placements, and there are some opportunities there as well. But that was certainly a big hit. And I think, from a broadcast perspective, with the growth of streaming, linear television has not been as strong. We're watching a lot of television, but it has not had the same positive trends as some of the streaming services have. And I think for brands, part of this is also about the things that they really need right now. You mentioned pivoting, you mentioned being nimble. It's about flexibility, it's about accountability. So they are really turning to channels that they feel like they can get more clarity about what are they getting from their investment, right? Are they measurable channels? That's why things even like OTT has more measurement capability than something like linear television.
And I'm sorry, what is OTT? Just to spell out.
Sorry, over the top streaming services like a Hulu or Roku.
Okay, Netflix.
Disney Plus.
Okay.
So that's definitely effective. I think the other big thing too is, and this kind of feeds maybe also into not just the pandemic, but just the social unrest. A lot of concern around brand safety and placement, and that's been a major conversation for many years. But I think this year especially, brands are very concerned about where their ads are being placed. So it's not only important to get the message right, but also to make sure you're being seen in the right environments. And that's absolutely been a key topic with clients recently.
Yeah, it's amazing. The thing that stood out, you talk about out of home, is just like movie theaters. I mean, there's just no way to go back to that. I mean, I know I'm suffering with that one, but it's just amazing how quickly the world is changing. And some things may come back, but weaker, and others may not come back at all. Across the panel to all of you now, you've given some great examples about companies, organizations, industries that are doing a good job at adapting and pivoting. Without naming names, or if you want to, whether it's a marketer or a company, what are some particular examples of those categories, specific examples, where they didn't do good, they didn't hold up as much as they should have? You did give some, but I'm curious, and it's not to rib on anybody, it's not to make fun of anybody or poke fun at any business that hasn't kept up. But I think the best example of how to move forward is to understand what hasn't worked for companies, or if a company or organization was paralyzed. What are some examples of ones that, whether they tried and didn't succeed or just weren't moving enough, weren't successful in this era of this pandemic? Whoever wants to jump in, please do.
My observation is that when I'm online and I'm trying to see if let's say a store is still in business or open, many small businesses spent so much money with Google and Google Small Business and SEO and all of that. And then you pop up on somebody's screen when they're looking for something, but your SMB, right, small business on Google is not up to date. So it'll say that you're open when you're not, or it'll say that you're closed when when nobody updated it, they forgot to update it, right? But you really are open, so you're losing business. That has happened to me several dozen times over the last several months as a consumer. And so that again is what I mean by marketing operations. You know, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot if you're not keeping up with your digital footprint and what you're putting out there in the world. You're very much missing opportunities of people who are looking for you.
You know, I think if I just think about the categories, look, we can think about the ones that have been most affected. Obviously, the travel took a huge hit. Luxury items seemed a little tone deaf if they were overplaying their hand in the current environment. But I think as is typically the case, it was those brands that really had out of necessity to shift or perish that have been probably the most creative, and I've been seeing some good work from. I think broadly, just as an example, I'd probably mention the QSR restaurant space. There's a lot of brands that have had to quickly figure out how to do curbside, how to do touch. So you've seen a lot of that kind of advertising from a lot of the big players. I think, again, being creative about how they still stay relevant to consumers. I've even seen some interesting work in the travel industry more recently about some of the hotel chains, for example, doing schoolcations, recognizing that we're all working and doing school remotely. Why not do it from Tahiti? So, they've been playing more to kind of what Randy was mentioning before. How do you make yourself more accessible and relevant during this current time? I think the sports industry, some have gotten, sports teams, some have gotten it right, some have gotten it completely wrong. The NBA bubble seems to have been somewhat of a success. British Premier League soccer returned with success, but there's a lot of other ones that I think have struggled. I think the most tone-deaf thing I saw was early on. I remember when there were still COVID patients trapped on cruise ships, and I was still seeing Carnival Cruise Line ads literally following in the ad break after the news item. So some did not pivot quickly enough, and I think they're the ones that probably didn't get it right from the start. I don't know, Carrie Ann, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm nodding. I got served a few ads in the beginning, especially where I was just like, oh my God, how have they not pulled their media? Like, just pause everything and just so very inappropriate in some cases. For me, in my little slice of the world, I think as far as personal experience, The digital sales and marketing program kind of as like a complete unit. Programs, especially kind of in the B2B space, where sales and marketing would have relied on events very heavily, waiting for that event to come around and not pivoting the strategy to exist more in a digital space. And accepting that that digital component is probably something that just becomes part of the strategy, if not the entire strategy moving forward. I think waiting on that, we're starting to see that lag. You know, what if you had events planned over the summer that you weren't able to attend and you didn't supplement on digital in some way, you're now suffering from it. So I think pivoting digital sales and marketing programs to just bring everything online as much as you can and to foster those relationships online where you didn't have to before. And I feel like there's a lot of teams who just don't have that skill set because they never had to have that skill set. So there's a lot of learning and training that needs to happen in order to do that effectively. So that's a lot. It's a lot.
So, I mean, how do companies or marketers go from the beginning of the pandemic where you kind of had no idea what was going on? Again, some were frozen in kind of fear or paralysis. Now we're heading into winter. It's like, how much does that change things? Because, I mean, you had the summertime, so people could get out more and more. I don't know specifically how it may tie into each of your industries, but this thing hit us in the spring. We had all of summer, so people were out and about. How do you see it changing for your fields going into the winter, where, you know, now everybody's really going to be home? Not many people are going to be out as much as they have been over the summer. Does that impact any of your fields? How do we change our thinking going into winter?
Yeah, a lot of regional differences, sure, as you would expect, and a lot of state-to-state differences just in terms of level of openness and return to business, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing would be a different call. But, you know, the reality is, you know, there's going to be certainly industries that struggle. I think a lot of people are wondering what will be going on with restaurants that aren't well positioned to do takeout and other services this winter in some states. So it's those kinds of natural things. But I think for the bulk of our clients, the good news is they've been sitting with this challenge like every other American for a few months, and hopefully they've at least figured out a path forward. And part of that path forward is to be flexible. So I think you're going to see the brands are expecting to need to pivot and have to have contingencies in place. They've got to think about, you know, what am I running now? And what if COVID flares back up in my area? What am I going to do? And what if, you know, we get the vaccine or whatever it is and we can start to open up fully again? You know, so they're all thinking through those contingencies and hopefully are being more prepared.
Carrie Ann, Randy, any other perspectives?
In terms of higher education, my schedule for spring, the classes that I teach, they're all online again. So I think getting back in front of face-to-face, you know, interaction with people is still long away. And I also think that for the winter, if you're in an industry where you sell things like, I don't know, things for the home, I think you are well positioned because that's where we're going to be in the cold weather. I actually prefer the cold weather, so I'm actually out more in the cold than in the heat. But you know, I realize I'm very much in the minority. But one thing I will notice in terms of Jeff, in terms of media and content, you know, just opening up a magazine and seeing people interacting in a print ad that have masks on. And then you turn the page and they don't, and you think, wow, that other company is really tone deaf. Like you're seeing, you know, a group of, in B2B, for example, like a business meeting, and nobody's wearing masks and they're all like huddled over a computer together. Like some of the stock photos that they're using need to be updated. It comes across as very tone deaf and insensitive in some cases. So I think if you're going to be making a media buy, that the content can't be offensive. you know? Same thing for TV commercials. There have been a lot of commercials that have been reshot and that have been, you know, either
Yeah.
showing them distanced or with masks on. And we've just become so used to seeing that when we see someone without it, it's,
Yeah, admittedly, even a year ago when they showed people, you know, in China, typically over there because of the pollution, they would have masks on even before pandemic or anything like that. And I was like, wow, I can't imagine ever living in a world like that. And it just goes to show you that now when you see commercials of car companies saying, you know, when you buy a car, you know, we'll deliver it touchless, we'll clean the car, and they show the person getting out of the car to deliver it with a mask on. It just shows you the new normal of where we stand and where we are. Now, what about behaviors? What do we think in each of your industries, if you want to jump in and just respond to the question, what do we think are things that even when we go back to normal, maybe we won't see? What are the things that are new behaviors, new ways of marketing because of the pandemic that when we go back to normal, whatever that may be, the things that we've taken on will stick around, and the things that we used to do that we're not going to go back to. So what are some things in your fields and areas where you think they may stick around based on new behaviors, or we're not going back to the old way of doing things? Is there anything that stands out?
I have a few thoughts, you know, on that. I think, as I said before, the idea of this being an accelerant for a lot of trends is really important. We're not going to go backwards in terms of people wanting to be nimble, needing more accountability for their investment. I think everybody's been challenged to do more with less. We have a lot of marketing teams that are shrinking or under pressure to still deliver the results, but with fewer resources. So I think the good news is that's created even more focus on accountability for marketing investments and emphasis on channels and tools that are going to be supportive of that. I would imagine that's going to not go backwards. That's going to continue to move forward as it has been. I think the other interesting thing we haven't talked about that, you know, is also going to be impacted by this is the thinking around in-housing. So, you know, obviously it's been the huge trend within the marketplace, brands bringing more and more marketing capabilities in-house, agency capabilities in-house. And, you know, I think the flip side of that, which they've found, is not a very flexible model. And especially as you need to pivot and change, you know, it's actually, I think, in many ways supports the idea of a more hybrid model where agencies play a role as well. So, you know, I would expect that there might be some rethinking on how far do you go with in-housing versus some kind of a hybrid model that, you know,
To find that right balance.
Yeah.
Okay. Carrie Ann, Randy, anything?
I think what a fantastic test and learn 6 months we've had. I think any successful digital component, you would just keep that by default. And if it betters your traditional strategy or traditional, you know, methodology, great. If it replaces it, great. So I do think that there are some kind of silver linings that could come from the last 6 months.
Do you make note of any in your particular field or with your company where you say, we're no longer going to go back to the way that we were doing it before, or here's a new method that we're using that we need to stick around even if things go back to normal?
Yeah, so
you don't have to give away trade secrets,
No,
but I'm just
no.
curious if there's anything that stands out.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Jeff mentioned a hybrid model. We really function with that. We do a lot of training with in-house teams, especially incorporating, like bringing sales and marketing together into a truly unified, you know, digital program with good communication and where, you know, both sides are leveraging the platforms that we install. And I think we've done even more of that because we've had so many conversations around, we just had to cancel or postpone an entire summer's worth of our trade show circuit, right? We didn't get to make this year. And so we had, you know, all of the hundreds of thousands, whatever connections we would have made didn't happen. So how can we do that online? So for us, it's been really great because we can become even more integrated with the client and helping to bring sales into the marketing component as well. So as far as our offering, that's been really fantastic. And I love that. I love organizations that have boots on the ground that have that training. So, it feels really good to be able to help in that. And then on their end too, why wouldn't they keep those programs and continue to bolster those efforts?
Randy, anything? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting even just sitting on this call. I think the other probably biggest change for our company and for a lot of our clients is just the idea of work from home. It's funny. We before the pandemic, I think on the first week of March, just rolled out to our company a new, more flexible kind of work from home policy. And I won't even tell you how many days it included in a month because it was shockingly little. But, to think about where we are today and just how much that has changed all of our perspective on how we find talent and how we communicate and connect. The world didn't end. Our teams did a great job just diving in and figuring it out. And actually we're now hiring remote workers, something we hadn't done in the past, just to find great people. So I think that will be a lasting change too. I know it's less specific to marketing, but certainly I think marketing agents, organizations, brands, agencies are actually well suited to that kind of remote work or some mix of it. So I think that's also part of the in-housing discussion is and what are we going to return to? It's not going to be the same.
But even though you say it's not exclusive to marketing, I think that's just a lesson that you can transfer across all the different fields. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue about the efficiency of if you do have access and ability to work remotely. It's amazing. And I mean, bigger companies in what they save in overhead because now no one's necessarily in the office, and there are some companies that are doing that. Now you have more in your budget to hire great people, to hire diversity, to hire more knowledgeable workers or additional knowledgeable or skilled workers. Randy, Carrie Ann, same kind of thing for you guys where based on the pandemic, you had to go remote, but there were efficiencies that you found based on the work that you were doing at all, or no?
So to play off what Jeff said, I think hiring remote opens up an organization's opportunities beyond their local area. You don't have to hire someone that lives within an hour's drive or an hour's train ride, on Metro North. You can hire anyone, anywhere. And I think that just shows that maybe everybody was thinking too small before all this happened. And, you were probably missing out on a lot of great talent, whether it was to hire or hire a consultant or whatever it is. My other thought is when I first started my agency in 2007, a year and a half later, like, right, the economy. So this is not my first rodeo, and the businesses that I had as clients back then who recognized that, marketing is indeed the only thing that brings money in the door and where you should really concentrate. So those that didn't do any marketing to save money didn't ultimately survive or thrive because, they could have been staying in front of their end user the entire time in some way, with budget constraints, sure, but, you don't just drop to zero. You don't just go away because then people think you literally went away, and that doesn't serve anyone. I think if anything, the whole marketing, however that you want to define that umbrella, whatever that means for you, traditional, digital, media, whatever that might be, it really is the driver of business. I mean, there really is no other way, right, to get your message out, to communicate. So I think that if you realize that you shouldn't drop to zero, that it will serve you well in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I went to college for marketing, and people have always said it's a business of storytelling. And I think because of everything that's going on, has been going on in the last couple of years, it's so important to get your story out there. And when it comes down to it, that's what I look at when I see commercials, when I see advertising. It's like not just telling me what the product is, what the service is, and the price, but what are you about? What are you trying to achieve? So it's interesting that you bring that up, like your presence. What are you bringing? And most of you have mentioned that tonight, just the social aspect of companies and what kind of role that they want to play to their stakeholders, to their stockholders, because it is a business. And it kills me to have to limit this conversation to an hour, because I feel like I can pick your brains much longer than that. But is there anything that I might have missed that we can squeeze in the last 9 minutes? Something that I didn't ask that maybe you wanted to discuss, bring up, or make a point about? Anything at all? Because I'm not going to say, okay, we covered everything regarding marketing in a pandemic. I'm going to leave it to the specialist. But is there anything that stands out that maybe we should kind of, even if it opens up a conversation going forward?
John, I would just throw in, we're talking about a lot of the impacts and changes for people. And I think just important to remember that with change comes opportunity. And I think the brands that are figuring it out and getting it right, there's a huge opportunity to connect with consumers, to be more relevant than ever. And for those that are finding that path, it's actually a very exciting time to be able to connect with consumers at a time when change is happening. I mean, think about habit formation and how powerful habits can be. The only thing that shakes people out of habits is like we're going through now. And it's just a great opportunity for brands to reset and think about how they can be relevant. And I think the smart ones are seeing that as not a, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, how am I going to deal with this? It's what an incredible opportunity for me to talk about my brand and be relevant to my audience in a new way. So a lot of it is about mindset. Carrie Ann and Randy, I'm sure you love your thoughts there too, but I think that's a huge, point to make, that it's just so important that people think about this as an opportunity and really challenge themselves. What is their brand? How do they better connect with consumers? And, try to use this as a stepping stone for the future.
Right. And to make sure that their mission and purpose is communicated and is authentic. Anybody can take out a paid ad, right? But, that it truly is embedded in the organization's culture is really important to consumers. People are aligning with businesses in ways that were never important before. So, if you want to stay neutral, that's fine. But if you really want to communicate something, then you need to do it in an authentic manner.
Carrie Ann? No pressure.
When you asked me to do this, I was like, oh, I am here to learn just as much as everybody else is, because I think we've all got the same questions. And Kevin put an interesting question in the Q&A, that if we have seen do we see significant pressure on marketers to make 2021 a blockbuster year to bounce back from 2020? I like to say 2021 can only be better, but knock on wood, I don't want to say that.
Careful now.
Yeah, exactly. We've had enough, and I don't know that I have an answer for that question.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. But I do think it's an interesting thought. Like you said, moving into winter, moving into 2021.
Well, Carrie, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but a lot of our clients kind of viewed initially, when this first happened in March, viewed the fall as that time to look forward to. And now it's fall and we're still in the same boat. Now it's 2021.
Yeah.
So, I think we're all hopeful and just not knowing when the end of this ride is. And that said, we're all eager for it and know it's coming at some point. But our hope is, I think people are optimistic about 2021, but if you want to be very practical about it, clients haven't committed dollars for Q1 of 2021 yet,
Yeah, that's definitely something I've noticed as well. Like shorter term commitments, more kind of bite-sized projects, assess at the end of the quarter, just not knowing what's going to happen. And so it's hard to anticipate anything for 2021.
And I mean, obviously, you all are the experts, you're the specialists. And it's not that we invited you here to have firm answers. I knew most of the conversation would be about mindset, about keeping your mind open, how to address what's going on, how to assess it, how to react. I didn't expect anybody would have the answers, because for me, it's like if anybody claims to have the answers in the middle of a pandemic, it's BS. But what you provided was ongoing assessment. Jeff had just said it a couple minutes ago, mindset. We had talked about society and everything that plays into it. And it's a constant game of assessment, as you, Carrie Ann, had mentioned, quarter by quarter. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game for now. But again, I didn't expect anybody to have a solid answer for any of these questions, but I think this gets people that are watching this and listening more in tune with keeping their mind open, because I think a lot of companies, when this first happened to the country and the world, it was just paralysis, maybe by analysis, because, you know, this was in our lifetime, it wasn't expected to happen. But I think what you all have shared tonight is about just assessing that you always have to expect things are going to change. You always have to improve, and you always have to move forward. So I thank you for all the information that you shared. It was what I expected based on your backgrounds. What you shared was just amazing. And again, even though the conversation ends now, I think the conversation was a conversation builder, a starter to further conversations we can have, whether with you or each of us can go back to our businesses and kind of implement these lessons. So thank you to all three of you for taking the time and discussing marketing in a pandemic. We hope to have you on in the future, just because this is, unfortunately, with the pandemic, things are going to change month to month. And I think going into the winter, as you all had referenced as well, I think it's going to be a big game changer. As much as we can anticipate right now, we don't know what winter's going to bring. So we'll see what happens. So again, thank you to the guests. Thank you for those attending. Again, remember, this session is being recorded for reviewing or viewing later for anybody that might have signed up but not been able to make it or didn't sign up at all. But keep up to date with American Marketing Association, our Connecticut chapter, AMACT, as I call it, we call it. Go to the website, sign up for alerts for upcoming events. As Christine had said, there's new members that came in, and every time you get an infusion of new members, there's just new ideas. I've seen it in various boards that I've served on. So there's new lifeblood pushing things forward. And there are going to be constant events coming up. There'll be events on mentoring, networking opportunities, educational opportunities, more panels, excuse me. So keep a lookout for that. Share and like on social media, wherever you may see AMACT. And don't forget, in a few moments when this is over, there'll be a survey that'll pop up. You'll also get an email, but it would be great if you could do it right after the session, so you can rate how we did, how I did, how our panelists did. I think they did amazing. They provided so much information, and they did it in layman's terms so I could understand it. So there's a lot of good information out there that we got. So again, thank you to my panelists, and thank you to everybody attending. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thanks, gang. Have a good evening.
Good night.